Hey friends, you're about to sit in on a conversation I had with Linda Ugelow, who shares some amazing, simple techniques and strategies that you can implement in your business to overcome some of the fears and anxieties we have around meeting new clients. As always, I'm your friend and referral partner out of San Francisco, Shawn Kunkler. Linda, thank you for joining me today. I'm excited about this conversation. I say that all the time, but I'm genuinely excited about this conversation.
I'm genuinely excited too, Shawn.
So to give people just really quick context before we dive in a couple sentences, who are you and what do you do?
My name is Linda Ugelow. People question, how do you say your last name? So before you get to do that, Shawn, Ugelow, I live in Boston. I am a speaking confidence and vocal coach, and I help people make speaking one of the best things that they get to do.
I love that. So I have so many questions. Where did your inspiration come from to even go down this path?
Back in 2014, I became an online entrepreneur. I took a coaching program and I needed to get out there. And I figured, well, if you're going to find people online, you got to speak online. So I took some video courses. I felt extremely awkward, but pursued it because I felt I really had this desire, this urge to make an impact and to build a business. So my motivation was there. The video mentor of mine said there's this amazing new app that you've got to try out. It's called Periscope. It's called live streaming. Of course, back there, nobody had heard of live streaming before. And all the marketing gurus said, got to get out there every day. So I thought, well, here I am in my late 50s. And I'm late to the game, but I'm going to be an early adopter for this. So I got on and they said, I think I mentioned, you got to get on every day to build your following. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. It was terrifying. My heart was racing. I was hyperventilating. I felt like I was having this out-of-body experience, and it took all my energy just to try to be coherent. And I figured, you know what? I've actually been a performer for 30 years at that point, so I had stage presence, and I knew how to like be on a stage and be relaxed and grounded in my body, but not speaking. It was dancing, it was music in a group.
That's interesting.
So this was new. This was new, but not completely unrelated to what I was doing. So but this is all to say, I knew I could do deep breathing and like power poses, affirmations, and you can name it. I tried it.
Yeah.
And I figured after a few weeks, I would calm down. So I was managing the fear, getting on every day for 5 or 10 minutes. And after 10 weeks of this, I'm about to press broadcast and my heart is still racing. I went, wait a minute, wait. How come I'm not comfortable yet? This has been 75 days and my heart is still racing. And I thought, well, maybe it's not true that practice brings you confidence. Maybe it's not true, or maybe it is true, but it would take me 2 years of this. And do I have the sustainability to keep that up until that time that I finally relax, or is there a way to get rid of it? Because I'm tired of managing, I want to get rid of it. So I closed my eyes and asked if the fear could talk, what would it say? And what came back was, you're going to be attacked. And I had these memories of being a kid, getting attacked from my 2 older sisters who were jealous of me because Mom always put me in the center of attention. She would say, Linda's so good. Why can't you girls be more like Linda? And that was their cue when my mother's back was turned to torture, tickle me on the floor, gang up on me, or kick me in the shins and say, shut up, stupid. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, well, of course you're not comfortable speaking on camera or standing in front of people because you learned it was dangerous to be the center of attention. Somehow movement bypassed that because I'd always been a dancer. That was my happy place. But I always hated having to introduce a song on stage. I would shake, I would tremble, all the same symptoms would happen to me. And all of a sudden it it has nothing to do with getting on camera. It has everything to do with what happened in the past. And then I thought, I wonder what else is kicking around back there from my past. And then I remembered times I was bullied. Teacher didn't get me, or people laughed at me when I had the wrong answer. I saw lots of people getting laughed at when they didn't have the right answer. And all different kinds of comments that had been made to me that cut me in small ways, little traumas. But I had been holding on to them. And not just that, but it was like they glommed together and they
Yeah.
created this feeling of, I'm not okay. People aren't interested in what I have to say. I don't want to be a burden for people, take up their time. So I rather just not say anything at all. And then I realized I've got stuff that I need to resolve. And luckily, because of my background in expressive arts therapy, I have a master's degree and a lot of psychological background and self-help. I had some tools, and I thought, I'm just going to try these tools. I tried something called EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, otherwise known as tapping. I did a bunch of just straight forgiveness. I forgive you, Mom, for not knowing what you were doing back then. I forgive you, my sisters, because you were doing the best that you could too, and you just wanted attention and, some positive regard from Mom. And I forgive you, Linda, that's me, because you didn't know how to handle it. You were only 10 years old, and, what resources did you have? So all these things that I went through, and in 5 days, my racing heart was gone. And it really never came back. The only time I feel it now is if I'm not prepared. And then I will feel a bit of anxiety, but just, for a minute, 2 minutes, something like that. That's it. But otherwise, no, I don't have that experience anymore. And there are other things that go into this, but that's the foundation. And that's how I looked around at that point and I said, you know what? No one's talking about this, about our speaking fear. And we're afraid to speak in so many ways. I mean, I was afraid in one-to-one conversations. I was afraid even like in group discussions or parties. I was always like, oh, did I say too much? I should have said this, or what did they think of me? And I was always in my head and never really present. And once I cleared this stuff away, all of a sudden, I felt like I could pay attention to other people more because I wasn't so consumed with managing my own anxiety around speaking. So suddenly I could listen better. I could, like even now, I feel like, I am here to be helpful, period.
That is incredible. It's incredible that you were able to wipe it out in 5 days. That's just, it's mind blowing. Similar to you, I grew up very shy from kindergarten. They actually started they delayed me starting kindergarten because I was too shy.
Oh,
So I had to wait a year. And I had like overwhelming anxiety. And now I do a podcast.
yes, yes,
I,
yes.
I took a different route. But similar to you, I was like, I read all the self-help books. I've tried everything under the sun. And, I still struggle with it. I'm in conversations to do a talk at a retreat for, I don't even know how many hundreds of agents. And your timing to be here is very serendipitous. So I appreciate that.
Well, use me to help you with whatever you need.
And it's interesting that there's different, I know in my life, and I would love for you to kind of speak on this, but there's different anxieties. There sometimes you get the dating anxiety, the one-on-one anxiety, or the small group where as soon as there's, let's say, 3 couples around you, now you have like it's a new layer. And then there's the anxiety of doing the presentation and you're standing in front of hundreds or thousands of people and you're the only speaker. And some people have I know for me, I have them in some categories and I've been able to dissolve them in some categories, but not in all of them. Which, thinking about what you just shared, it is all just, it's fear, but it's not real. It's all perceived and it's hinged on these other unfortunately, these other experiences, even if you don't remember them.
Yes, and it's real for the younger you. And the reason
True.
why it's still there is because it hasn't been resolved because you didn't have the resources at the time to
Yeah.
resolve it. You didn't have the mentor, the teacher, or the parent there. I mean, most of these things I didn't have anyone to talk to about this.
No.
So, I came up with my own coping mechanisms, which was to hide.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in the 70s and 80s. There was no safe spaces.
No.
There were no one to talk to about your feelings. And to your point, at that age, you only have the tools of that age,
Hmm.
which it's you're kind of in more of a survival mode. You don't have this any life experience or ways of relating or even just using your voice and being like, hey, this is how I'm feeling right now. Like it
Hmm.
was a totally different era. Um, wow, I don't even know where to go with this. I'm like, my mind is honestly, it's blown with how quickly you were able to make a pivot. Um, are there aspects of that you can share?
Well, I think what would be, I think thinking of our listeners
Yeah.
and the kinds of environments that they need to speak at, which are let's see, the open houses,
Yep. Buyer consultations,
buyer consultations,
seller listing consultations are
listening.
in the beginning. I can obviously speak from experience. They're a little anxiety producing because you're literally walking into someone else's home and talking to usually one or two or more sellers who are in a very high end level of stress. And then the other area too, to your
And are the
point,
sellers the homeowners or are they?
they're yes, they're homeowners in some capacity. So sometimes I've had a case where the parents have passed, the property was left to the six siblings, and then I had to walk into a room of six decision makers and field questions. And so you're on stage. It's happening. And then the other area too, to your point earlier of being an entrepreneur, the rule that I heard early on is you don't want to be a secret agent. You have to put yourself out there. If people don't know you, they're not going to do business with you. So
That's right.
agents have to be doing social media promotion, talks, like you
Hmm.
in some capacity. You have to put your work out there so people know what you stand for, what you do, how you can help, how you can be of service. So those are the big areas that I would say
Yeah.
agents have to be on stage, if you will.
Yes. Well, I think what could be fun is for me to briefly share the framework that I feel is important for people to think about, and then like how they can, let's pick one or two of those situations and
Mm,
look at some reframing that we can do around it. So that will make it kind of more enticing or more inviting. And because ultimately, I want, as I said at the very beginning, I want people to feel like the communication that they get is something they love to do. That speaking with people is something that's the best part of their job.
yeah.
That they look forward to meeting this new group of people or
Mm,
curious about how they can be of service and because basically that's what you're doing. You are providing a service, you're making someone else's life easier. So when you are able to clear your stuff away so that you do come in with that sense of service and helpfulness, then of course you want to provide a safe space for other people. You are there in service for those other people.
mm.
And I think it gets tied up with the business part where we have attachment to outcome.
We
We
do.
want to get the business. We want to get the business. But I think if we can lead with a service and feel less attached and just know that what will happen, we can relax about that, let that go, and be more attentive to how we can be present for other
Yes.
people. So let's talk about presence. The reason why it's important to clear away our past stuff is because it keeps you from being in the present. you're being pulled to the past.
Makes
These
sense.
things, that's what triggers are. So that's why it's important to, just like get rid of that stuff. You don't need it. You don't need anything holding you back. So it's going to benefit you to spend a little time. Now you say, oh yeah, only 5 days. And it's true. It was only 5 days, but it was like a 5-day intensive retreat. So it's not like,
That's valid.
so like when I work with people, if we're working once a week, it might take, 8 to 12 weeks or something, but it's equivalent.
Yeah.
So the second thing, though, is that we may be concerned. A lot of people, if you ask, what are you afraid of? Well, I'm afraid of looking foolish, saying the wrong thing, making a mistake, that I'm going to be judged. These are the things that we tend to rehearse in our heads.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We're always mentally rehearsing. If you are rehearsing, you're gonna mess this up, or you're gonna get tongue tied, or you're gonna stumble over your words again, or you're gonna freeze. And we have things going on in our heads that if someone else was saying them to us, we would think, I don't like you saying that to me. So Shawn, if I say you're gonna mess up, you may stumble and look foolish. I mean, you're going to say, I don't know if I like Linda so much. I think I'll like find out what, say I've got to go check out the food table here if we're at a networking event.
I'll be right back.
Right. I'll be right back. Or nice to meet you. And it wasn't. And that is because it was not nice to meet you. And this is what we got to understand about our thoughts is that if we are saying mean things to ourselves, if we are waiting to berate ourselves with every mistake we made, we are not going to feel safe inside ourselves.
True.
And if we're not safe with ourselves, we're not going to feel safe with other people. So we really do need to grow up our self-talk. We've got to learn how to be, instead of an inner critic, an inner ally, to go from being hurtful to being helpful. And we can do this. We have no qualms about thinking, oh, yeah, we can build our communication skills with other people. Yeah. But yes, you can also build your communication skills with yourself. And you really need to. And why not? You are the one person who can do it. No one else can do that for you. No one can be supportive of you 100% of the time, but you can be there. And of course, it's not going to be 100%. We're not perfect. I'm not perfect. But the more that you can be and have an encouraging voice inside your head rather than a discouraging one. I mean, if you were to choose one, which would you choose? Of course you would choose to be encouraging. Yeah. So make it happen. One way to make it happen is to notice when it's not happening. So like if you have, I don't know when it would come up. Maybe it's when you're driving to a house, what's going on in your head? Or when you are thinking of setting up a time, like notice when you tend to have some negative thoughts in your head and write them down. Write them down so you can see what it is. Because when you bring something from the unconscious out into the light, then you can do something about it. If you don't hear yourself being mean, then how can you learn to be nicer? So allow yourself to befriend the inner critic and say, hey, I'm going to help you be better, but just let me become aware of the mean thoughts that you are spewing out at me, and then we'll take it from there. So that's number 2.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
To interrupt. What if it's not necessarily a negative thought per se, but just a feeling that we then associate with something negative, meaning that feeling of the butterflies, for example.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's where we go back to the first step of investigating what's underneath it. It's like, okay, I've got this nervousness. When I said to you earlier, I closed my eyes and asked if the fear could talk, what would it say? If these butterflies could talk, what would they say? For me, what came back was, you're going to be attacked. For you, it might be, I'm afraid I won't get the sale, or I'm afraid I'll look foolish, or they're not going to like me, or they won't feel like I'm authoritative. And then what you do with that, one way is to just follow the thread and say, well, when did I feel judged early on? When's my earliest what are the earliest memories I have of being judged? Because those are probably the foundational times
Yeah.
that you felt injured. And then what next time you get injured, it kind of like sticks to that first one and, on and on.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
it just keeps growing like a little snowball. So that's what I recommend and then you do those things that I recommended is, like you can journal about it. If you can learn how to do EFT, you can just do simple forgiveness, but find a way to bring compassion and understanding to that younger you so that it doesn't feel like it's a hot topic anymore. It doesn't feel like it's activated. So I see the nerves as really a messenger. It's a messenger of things that haven't yet been resolved. And it's just a little bit of attention and commitment that we need to make to clear those away so we can be fully present for our clients and customers.
That's so good. I just filled a page of notes from that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
That's incredible. And it's so interesting. I'm relating to my life and where it fits. And I feel like I've done pieces of this in some areas, but I haven't done all of it in all the places, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
My background was, I moved to San Francisco to get into martial arts. And then I wound up running a martial arts school and competing a lot and managing the fear and anxiety associated with a competition it's incredibly hard. And so it's a lot of self-talk is all it is. And as you were sharing that, I was like having flashes of those conversations I had to have with myself up to that moment.
Yeah, I can imagine that's like a whole other level because not only is it competition, but you can physically get hurt.
Yes. Yeah. And if you're holding back and hesitant, you can miss the block and really you can really get messed up really fast.
Yes,
And
that's a exercise in being fully present.
Fully, like it's one of the, and not to rabbit hole on this, but it's one of the only 2 times in my life that I got into that flow state, and I didn't, like, as you come out of it, you just feel amazing because you're so focused. And the other times are when I'm on a motorcycle and it's just, you're going through corner after corner and you're just in that moment. Similarly, when I'm in a sales presentation, I go into that state as well.
Yes. Yes, and that's the kind of experience that we want to get to.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a peak experience when you go into a flow state.
It really is. And I think to your point earlier is you're so immersed with the person, the thing, the activity that you're not focused on you. You're actually in the moment.
Yeah.
And the moment you thinking about the moment, you're out of the moment.
Yes. And not that you can't get back in, you can get back in.
Yeah.
And it's a practice. It's a practice. It's not like you're either there or you're not, and it's not like you're going to be there the same way every time.
Yeah.
And you don't need to be, and that's what makes it interesting, is that everything is different. And we can't come in with a memorized script.
Sure.
For this kind of thing. You know your quote unquote talking points, so you know the elements that you need to cover. And perhaps when you're new, you might forget certain things, and so you're kind of like scrambling to like remember everything that you're needing to remember. But ultimately, it's almost like doing. So I'm a dancer in my background. It's almost like doing an improvised couple dancing. So there's a repertoire of movements, and then you improvise with those movements.
100%. I 100% can see how that fully relates to what real estate agents, any salesperson does. Is like no script, no formula is perfect, and no one is going to fit. You have to match the music
Yes,
and make it
yes,
work.
yes. And you're dancing with your partner.
Exactly. It's funny, before we hit record today, I shared with you that this isn't an interview. I don't have a list of questions because if I write a list of questions, it pulls me out of this moment. I'm not paying attention to what you're saying. I have an agenda, and it's almost like a script. It pulls me out of flow with you in the conversation of, I don't know where it's going to go. And there's a little bit more curiosity on my part if I just let it go to where it needs to.
Hmm. Yeah. And if we relate that to the realtor experience, there you want a great deal of that open-endedness, and at
Mm.
the same time you need a structure, and we also have a structure. We have a time limit, so that helps, but you want to get to a certain understanding. And there are certain outcomes depending on which of these situations you're talking about, if it's an open house or a listing
Yeah,
consultation. But you do want to like have some ending point in mind.
that makes sense. And so, out of curiosity, let's say an open house where most agents can host easily two per weekend. So you have that schedule, you have the repetitions, you can more easily, I'm just thinking about my own experience, I can more easily map out, oh, I get anxious around this time. These are the thoughts. I can work on intercepting them and acknowledging them, and I can kind of pattern it out. What do you recommend for those one-off situations where they come up more infrequently, meaning you're invited to do a talk on a stage to 100 strangers? How, you know, not that you know, because that's stating a fact in the future that you don't know, but based on history, you're expecting the anxiety to come up for you.
Hmm.
How would one go about like working on that?
Well, I would say, why wait for the anxiety to come up? Do some of the work that I talked about and
Yeah.
get it out of the way. So that's number one. There are lots of things that you can do to prepare for yourself. The very first thing that I do, if I know that I have something that I've been invited to, immediately I do mental rehearsal. And you can do mental rehearsal for your listings and open houses and everything you do as well.
Yeah.
And the way you go about it is just imagining seeing yourself in that space just the way you want to be. So let's say you're on stage, just imagine seeing yourself kind of like moving around and having the kind of stage and talking presence that you would ideally love to have. Feeling comfortable, feeling relaxed, feeling, I don't know if you want to feel kind of intense or funny or, whatever energy that you want to bring, imagine that. And anytime the thought of that upcoming experience comes to mind, I would spend another 5, 10 seconds just in that brief mental rehearsal, picturing just the way I want it to be. And again, same thing with if I have an open house on Sunday, I'm going to picture like how I want to feel while I'm there.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you go there and you're saying, I feel this way, this way. But if you think ahead of time, how do you want to feel?
Yeah.
Then you can practice that while you're there. And this kind of intentionality makes a huge difference for the outcome and the experience for you. So that's number one. Number two is that, especially if you're going to be speaking on stage, there's so many things that are important for you to prepare other than what you want to say. So the mental rehearsal is one technique, but we tend to forget that we present with our whole bodies. And so you want to feel like open and loose and stretched out. So you got to do something with your body to open it up, because your posture is going to make a difference in how people feel about you. If you go in and you're kind of slumped over and you're kind of hunched, and that's going to make a very different impression, and it's going to feel very different to you than if you feel kind of open and wide, like you've just done some exercise, you've done some martial arts, and you just feel like powerful in your body. That's
Yeah.
going to translate. Number two, the same thing with our voice. We tend to think that, oh, I can just open my mouth and speak. No, there's nobody who gets on stage who is a performer who doesn't warm up. And
That's
you as
true.
a speaker, your voice is your instrument. People totally overlook it. And you know what? It sounds like it. A lot of people's voices are very constricted. They don't have a lot of power or resonance in their voice. And I'm doing this particularly now. You can hear the difference in my voice. Or they might be like this. And, it's like we all have vocal habits. But if you want to feel like your voice is one that you can depend on,
Yeah.
you've got to make some sounds. And it could be very simple. If you have done any singing, then maybe you know some singing exercises. But you can just go, ah, wow, wow, whoa, wee, wah, yeah, and loosen up your jaw and your tongue. Make different kinds of tonalities. You can go like this and ooh, 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 ha, ha, ha. Key eyes.
Yeah.
To get some power. But warm up your voice and warm it up in ways that you won't even be using it. But it gives you this freedom to pull in from different directions. You want to be able to speak in different volumes or with different cadences and bring a sense of, oh, this is what I like. And I think it's great for realtors.
Yeah.
I like to think of the way we speak as being a tour guide. So if you think of like when you are doing an open house and you're a tour guide for that house,
Yeah.
we are also being a tour guide in how we use our voice, because the way you emphasize things, the way you pause, it allows other people to get the sense from you what is important. What do we want to gain from this? What is the feeling behind it? So this enjoyment and attention to the way we speak is, number one, going to ground you in the talk that you do. It's going to make it more fun because you're thinking about, how do I want to say this? How do I want to express this? And allow your body to respond to that in the moment. And it's going to be different every time, which makes it so much fun. And it's going to slow your speech down, make it more clear in your pronunciation so that people understand you, because you are inside all the sounds you make. I like to say to my students, every vowel deserves to be heard, because we tend to just race by and not pay attention. But when we are inside the sound and production of the words we say, then we're not only taking up the space that people have handed over to us, because if they ask you a question, that's your time in the limelight. It is. That's your limelight time, when you're answering a question or when you're asking one. And people want to hear what you have to say. So why would you rush past it and make it such that it's hard for them to understand and go, oh, wait, what was that?
That is so good. That is so good. And it's such a great reminder. It's funny now that I'm having flashbacks of starting this podcast almost 100 episodes ago. And beforehand, doing all the jaw exercises and warming up, because I was nervous as hell. And I go back and listen to the first couple and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. And I don't do it anymore, thankfully, but I've gotten away from it. And so I love this. This is just such an amazing reminder. The other piece that you talked about how you want to show up in advance. I worked at a luxury athletic club, and if somebody was coming in at the front, our offices were in the back, which was literally on the other end of the block. And so it would take a few minutes. You'd have to walk through all these halls and corridors, through the weight room floor and around all these corners to get there. And so I would have this moment to prep myself. And what I would do is we'd get the name of the person. I'd Google them really fast. I'd figure out, are they a CEO? Are they the assistant? Are they an attorney? And then as I was walking, I would always think, all right, what 3 things do they need from me? How do I need to show up? And I would think of 3 words. And I'd basically become that character for me showing up in that moment. And I always it's fascinating listening to you because it would prep me and it would change the way that I was speaking or how I was presenting it to that person because the personalities are inherently different. It's so interesting. I love this. I love this whole concept, especially
It
going
makes
back
it
to
it
voice.
makes it fun. Yeah, it makes it a lot of fun because then like what you just described was gorgeous. You know, the idea of like you are during your walk through the corridors creating your pre-paving your relationship to this person.
Hmm.
You're going in with a sense of attention. What do I want to bring or what do they need from me? Which is, of course, you know, as a realtor, when you go into any situation, that's what you want to ask, right? What do these people need from me? And that's where that switch of from you to them can happen
Mm.
if you're not overly concerned with what's going on for you. And that's, again, that's why we want to clear that away so you can be fully present
Yeah.
to what is it, adjust and create and develop that sense of connection between you and the people who you're going to be speaking to.
Yeah, and it's and now I'm like thinking about it again in relating it to my own experiences when I focus on them, my anxiety and issues dissolve. When I'm focused on me and worried in the back of my mind, how am I perceived? How am I being heard? Do I look okay? Does this shirt match? And I'm like tangenting myself in my own head. The spotlight does move to me and not on them. But even if I'm speaking and I move it to them, I'm now more concerned about, is this message being heard? Is it landing? Do I need to adjust what I'm saying because I don't think it's resonating with them or whatever it is? But I'm then
Mm-hmm.
focusing on their needs, not mine.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's I think that's the switch
Yeah.
for agents. And to your
Yeah.
point earlier, it's that that conversation you're having in your head beforehand is you're focusing on you
Yeah.
is the reality. And
Yeah.
then
So we want to take away like how I look, those kinds of worries. I mean, like, who cares? Who cares?
it gets easier
But
with age, that's for sure.
yes, it does. Okay, it does. I'm in my 60s now. I agree. But I do want to not gloss over. It's not. I see it as there are parallel things going on.
Mm.
There is our presence, which we have a responsibility for, and our attention to other people. So it's not just that we're thinking about other people and like getting into maybe people pleasing or anything like that,
Sure, sure.
but that we're also holding the presence. We're holding space for the other people. And
Hmm.
when I say that, it means that I periodically scan my body to make sure that I'm not holding tension,
Mm-hmm.
that I can feel my feet on the ground and I'm like relaxed in my body and open. That is like a practice of holding the space in the conversation. So it's very easy for us to like start to, pull in and move, get tight
Mm.
as we are in conversation. It's almost like we I think we leave ourselves
Interesting.
and we abandon. That's the word we kind of like abandon ourselves. I want you to stay inside yourself. When you are grounded, when you are connected with your physical self, your feet on the ground, your posture, the feeling, the sensation of your voice coming out of your mouth, then you are actually providing in a very unconscious but tangible, sensing way for other people that you are authoritative, that
Mm-hmm.
you're competent, that you're reliable, trustworthy, and grounded because you're holding that grounded space inside yourself. So this is what makes like doing presentations and open houses fun. So like if you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to do this open house and the only thing that I'm going to do what I always do, except this time I'm going to scan my body every few minutes and just make sure that I'm relaxed in my body. Or I'm just going to notice, I just want to pay attention to my breath. That's my one thing that I want to do is just notice my breath and feeling it flowing in and out. Or I want to feel like as I talk to people, I'm a little more free with my arms. Just see what happens if I let my arms be more expressive.
Yeah.
And so every time you speak, when you have something like that, a little secret thing that you're going to do, it makes it a place of curiosity because you want to do it because you have no other opportunity to try it out except in that experience.
That is so funny you mentioned that. I would get anxiety whenever I was going over the pricing presentation and the negotiation came up. And I always wanted to be perceived as calm. Because if I'm anxious, they're going to mirror that. And so I would wiggle my toes. But I would do it like I would just keep wiggling my toes because I knew no one can see it. And it's going to remind me to stay in this moment. And
That's so great.
That was my little like hack, which I completely forgot about all these years.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, and I do really appreciate that of reminding yourself to be back into that moment. And even you sharing that, I adjusted my posture. Fun fact, I was on the treadmill the other day and I sneezed and my whole back tightened up. And so now I'm like, it actually feels more comfortable to roll forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm wiggling a little bit just to maintain comfort, literally, in my body.
Yes. So everyone should have an ice pack in their freezer.
Yes.
I want to say one more thing.
Yeah, please.
If you're a coffee drinker and you get nervous when you're in front of people, don't have full-bodied coffee. Just cut it in half with decaf or something. Lower it because coffee is going to make your heart race. And so why take a substance that's going to create that kind of extra nervousness for you?
That's a great point. Yeah, I mean, it just drinking coffee creates anxiety, and so yeah, that's a great point. You're compounding moment. I don't know how this relates specifically, but I think it's an interesting. I was remembering. I think it was Tony Robbins was talking about. He was talking about Bruce Springsteen and then another Carly Simon maybe, who Carly Simon would get like incredible anxiety before she went on stage, and she would get sweaty palms, upset stomach, her head would feel floaty, and she knew she was having an anxiety attack and didn't want to go on. And then Bruce Springsteen said, right before I go on stage, I get sweaty palms, sweaty, my stomach gets in knots, and that's when I know it's time for me to go. And I was like, whoa, that's so profoundly interesting. It's the same chemicals in our body, but just a completely different definition.
Right. And I remember the first time I heard of the idea, the reframe of, rename your fear as excitement. And I thought, wow, that is so cool. I love that. The only problem for me is I realized that I could tell the difference between fear and excitement. And so the way I think of it now is it matters about the dosage. It's kind of like salt. A pinch of salt makes it dish tasty. Too much ruins the dish. And the same thing with adrenaline and cortisol.
That's a great way to.
So we can't really tell what Carly was experiencing and what Bruce was experiencing. In terms of degree.
That's true. Very true.
And their inner experience. I think if it works for you, go with it. I think it's fantastic. And if it's not, then that's fine. It just means that you have another pathway to release that stuff from the past that's getting triggered. It's stuff getting triggered. And, once you deal with it, it's not going to come back. That's the amazing thing. That's the difference between managing fear and eliminating it. Is if you don't do this stuff, you'll have to keep managing it. And maybe it's not a big deal for you to manage it. And that's perfectly fine. But the beauty is that if you do deal with that old stuff, that old stuff is going to be dealt with. Occasionally it may come back. Occasionally I think, I think I need to redo how my father was not interested in anything I was doing. Or how my father told me, oh, you'll never succeed. I think I need to just do another round with that.
Huh.
So it's not like what I'm saying is 100% foolproof, but it will definitely move the needle. And when something does come up again, you have a tool, you have a pathway to deal with it. Right now, I'm creating a journal for speaking. It's kind of like a speaking log.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, just as you were talking, maybe I could do one for realtors. And the idea is that we can think about, well, what are my concerns about right now? Am I going into this with any concerns? What are they? And giving yourself 5 minutes to just, name them, and to also think, well, what am I curious about, or what am I excited about? Why am I looking forward to this? Why am I looking forward to meeting these particular people? And then afterwards have a place to debrief. Like, what did I like about that?
Yeah.
What did I wish I could have done differently and I'll try to do next time? Or what am I proud of myself for? Because ultimately we want to make it, if we can allow ourselves to feel like this is a learning experience. And not only is it okay that when I did podcast number 1, I sounded nervous, I'm so super proud of myself because I couldn't have gotten to podcast 97 without doing that podcast 1.
100%. And I actually made a pact with myself early on that I am not going to go back and review and critique or judge myself until I get through 100 episodes. And so I freed myself up to be like, nope, not paying attention to that now. And that actually it freed me up to just try different approaches, try different formats on the show, just try stuff and just have fun with it. And
and that's how we should be in all the meetings that we go to, is that try stuff out, free yourself up, allow it to be a process of experimentation, and let it find the fun. See how you can find the fun.
Yeah. And I really appreciate 2 things that you shared is there's a difference between managing the fear and eliminating it and finding your own way. Like try these different modalities, try these different techniques and see what's working for you, but try them.
Yes.
When you have this journal for realtors, let me know. You're welcome to come back and we'll talk about it on the show. I think it's it's a phenomenal tool. One of the sales audits that I do it with my team. We have, for let's say listings, we have 103 step checklist, which is incredible, but it's broken into sections and we only ask 2 questions and they're very specific. I learned this, I think, from Brian Tracy, who's a sales guru from years ago. They're stated in a way that they're positive. It is, what did we do really well that worked? And what will we improve next time? And so it keeps you out of that spiral.
Yes. I love that.
I'm excited for that journal. I think it's such a powerful thing, and having the opportunity to talk to so many agents and knowing those people, especially the newer ones getting into the business and not necessarily even knowing where they're going to have hurdles, they can intercept those in advance, which I think is such a great tool. I see your book behind you, which I love that you have it on display. It's funny, and I would love to talk to you about it. We can probably chat about it off air, but I put out a book, The Insider's Guide to Home Buying, and I'm on the cover, and it's so uncomfortable for me to see myself on the cover.
Why?
I don't know. It's
Why did you choose to put it there?
I wanted it to look like a business book, like an insider, like basically almost like a magazine cover,
Mm-hmm.
where it looked like um, it had that look and feel.
Mm-hmm. So, and have you gotten any feedback?
On the cover itself,
Yeah.
no,
Mm-hmm.
no, this is just a story in my head.
Um, yeah, it's well, I know that when I was thinking about putting this photo on, a lot of people were saying to me, "Don't if you're writing a nonfiction book, you shouldn't have a picture of yourself on the cover. It
Hmm.
should be about the person who you're writing for. It should you should leave it up for imagination." However, I did some kind of crowdsourcing of the cover, and
Smart.
overwhelmingly people liked this photograph. And I have to say, I love this photograph of me when I had this particular photo shoot. The photographer did a whole series of me like moving because I'm a dancer,
Yeah.
and this was one. And I thought, oh my god, this is so fun. I have to find something special for this particular photograph. So I happen to be delighted that it's on the cover, and I'm glad that people do say I really like the cover. The picture kind of shows a sense of delight,
Yeah.
which kind of ties in. I mean, I think you're a very handsome guy, Shawn. I would be happy to see your face on the cover of a book.
Thank you. Thank you.
And also, just knowing the energy, of, your personhood, that would also make me feel, open and happy about that. I do think that, one chapter in my book, I think it's chapter 7, it's about healing our self-image. And I think that
Mm.
this is something that I've struggled with. I still struggle with to some extent. Everybody has, it's like my crooked teeth, the shape of my nose, that my eyes are too close together, whatever it is, that we have this extraordinary focus on our self image that is hard. It takes up a lot of mental capacity,
Yeah.
that we're so self conscious about it. And I feel like what I attempted to do in this chapter is to help us find ways to not just feel more relaxed about how we look and appear,
Mm.
but to feel more appreciation for it. Because if you think about it, like, so my mom wanted me to have a nose job. And even though I refused it and kept pushing her away, I grew up feeling really uncomfortable about people seeing my profile because that's what she said she'd like to look at. So
Oh,
I know it's kind of like, really, Mom?
that's hard.
Yeah, years later, I said, "Why did you say that to me?" She said, "Oh, I guess because I wanted one myself." And, this is why I say that we can forgive each other because
Mm.
we know not what we say. People are just unconscious. Anyway, what I came to realize were a couple of things. One is our body is functional. And I have an amazing nose that can breathe in air freely. I've never had allergies. My husband, his nose gets stuffed up. I feel so blessed with having my clear and free nose that I
Mm.
can breathe. I love my nose for that. So, yes, we can love the features of our body. And the other thing that helped me is my features are a very unique mishmash of all the genes from my ancestors. So
Mm.
I feel like I am carrying the heritage or the legacy of the people who came before. And when I think about it in that way,
That's beautiful.
yeah, it's like it changes it for me. And then rather than thinking about what people see on a surface level, I think about what do I want to radiate?
That's
What's like what do
yeah.
the beauty from within, and even like Estee Lauder and these other big giants in the cosmetic industry, when they talk about beauty, they talk about inner beauty. So let our light shine out. And that's what I focus on now rather than, am I pretty or whatever, it's like, who cares? It's like people are happy to see me
Yeah.
because of the energy that I bring. And when they look at this face, they're saying, oh, here's Linda. Or they say, here's Shawn. Or, here's whoever, you are who are listening. And just remember that people are happy when they feel good in your space.
I love that the sunlight is now peeking through the window and now hitting your face and illuminating you, which is perfect timing for this. So that's just a really cool magic moment. But it is really nice to reframe it in your mind and have a sense of pride. Is I am my ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having this opportunity to live this amazing, extraordinary life because of all of their hardships to get me to this point, and I'm carrying pieces of them, and so it's such a nice reframe.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
There's there's one phrase that I remember also holding, like the beauty of diversity and the diversity of beauty.
mm,
And that one of the things that makes us so, like, think of puppies. Every puppy's a little different. And we don't care if it has a spot on its shoulder or its eye or its ear. Like, we can have our spots too and be adorable.
it's true, and it's funny when you do love a puppy, it's little quirky spots or whatever they have. It becomes the endearing part.
Right. Right.
Um,
So remember, you are endearing too.
I
We're all
like that.
endearing. Yeah.
I appreciate that. This has just been such a wonderful chat with you. I appreciate it. Again, if you decide to work on the journal specifically for realtors, you're welcome to come on. I would love for you to showcase that. If people want to reach out or pick up your book, what's the best way to find you?
Well, come to my website, lindaugelow.com. You can download a free chapter of the book.
Nice.
And you can also download the speaker preparation checklist, which is the list and description of the things that I think that are worth doing before we speak in order to feel grounded and focused and energized.
Well, guess what I'm downloading this afternoon?
Good for you. Good for you. Yes. And
Awesome.
by the way, yes, you can
Yes.
get that right on my website. I think that's the best thing. So my website is lindaugelow.com, Ugelow, Ugelow.
Awesome. Thank you, Linda. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Shawn.